This time on Psychic Investigators. In small-town Georgia, a man is murdered in his own bed.
It was a violent crime. It touched the very core of this community.
There are no witnesses and no murder weapon.
We didn't have much of anything.
But the family wants answers.
He didn't deserve this. Our family was desperate.
They call in psychic Phil Jordan. Can he find the killer among them?
I realize it's a woman. She's horrified herself she's doing it and amazed that she can do it.
Thomaston, Georgia, about an hour's drive from Atlanta. An old mill town that's seen better days. A sleepy little community where doors are left unlocked. That is, until one late summer day in 2002. 8:30 in the morning, September 9th. A neighbor arrives at Thomas Bragg's front door. Bragg, a roofer, has recently broken his leg in a fall. His neighbor has offered to take Bragg on some errands. When no one answers, the neighbor steps inside. In the bedroom, he makes a disturbing discovery.
When we arrived on the scene, Mr. Bragg was in the bed. He had the pillow over his face.
Sergeant Tim Ledbetter is the lead investigator.
He was tucked in the bed like somebody had placed him there.
But who? The killer? This is murder. Ledbetter calls the Georgia Bureau of Investigation for help. Special Agent Vaughn Estes immediately rules out robbery as the motive.
This doesn't look right. You've killed a man here in this room. You didn't take anything. You didn't disturb anything. Everything's still in its place.
This is TGA Action News. Mike Ellerby reporting. A shocking discovery in Thomaston this morning. Police found the body of 46-year-old Thomas Bragg in his Fifth Avenue home. Police are asking anyone who has information about the case to call the Thomaston Police Department.
Tom's daughter from a previous marriage is stunned by the news.
My boss showed up and took me to my mother's house. Nobody would tell me anything. When I got to my mom's house, my mom told me what had happened to my dad. I was a daddy's girl. It was devastating.
Tom would do anything for anybody. He loved people. He was kind. I mean, Tom would give you the shirt off his back. He didn't deserve this.
Tom and his twin brother Tim ran a roofing company in Thomaston. Everyone knows them.
This case was a violent crime, and it touched the very core of this community. Everyone wanted closure to this case.
And they wanted answers.
Someone walked right in the front door, killed a man in the bed, and walked right back out the front door, and no one could believe that that could happen in Thomaston. It's a quiet, sleepy little town.
But there was nothing quiet about Tom's marriage. His wife, Mary Ann, had been meeting men on the internet.
Tim had been there earlier that day, and he said that they were fighting. My dad, he was pretty upset with the relationships that she had on the computer.
But they had always fussed and fought. They had never gotten along. So this was nothing new to me. I told Tim Ledbetter that Mary Ann did not kill Tom, but I knew there was someone out there who did.
Anytime you have a husband killed in the marital home, the spouse is going to be one of your top suspects.
When Mary Ann Bragg arrives home, she's informed of Tom's murder and taken in for questioning.
We took her into interview custody, towed her vehicle to check it out for any blood, any fibers.
But during that interview, something disturbing emerges. Marianne is not acting like the grieving wife.
There was no concern. There was no talk of the funeral. There was no talk of who killed my husband. There was no talk of anything emotional. It was very cold. During the interview, I was not getting the impression that she was a grieving widow. I was getting the impression that she had just been happily divorced.
The clothes that she had on was sent to the crime lab.
Despite Marianne's unusual behavior, police have little to go on. Her vehicle and clothes come back from the lab, and they're clean. Even her alibi checks out. She was in LaGrange, 30 miles away at her psychiatrist's. There is no hard evidence to tie Marianne Bragg to her husband's death. Weeks go by. Tom's friends, family members, co-workers, and neighbors are interviewed and re-interviewed. But nothing. With no new information, the case is going nowhere fast.
There was always that hope that something new would turn up. A little bit of information that could be the glue to put a lot of puzzle pieces together.
Weeks turn to months, then years. The investigation goes stone cold.
2 years after the homicide, we still didn't have much of anything. I was more or less at my wit's end.
You want to bring closure for these people, and when you know, beyond any shadow of a doubt in your mind, you know who did it, you know why they did it, but when you move from that into the trial, you have to have something substantial, and that's where we were not at. You may get one bite at the apple and miss.
We called the police department every week, but after so long, you kind of grow used to, not having hope.
I felt like Tom's murder will never be solved. I have got to find someone to help with this case.
And then one night, she does. Tom's sister sees a television program about Phil Jordan, a psychic who has helped police on hundreds of unsolved cases.
A psychic had never crossed my mind in my life.
You hear so many horror stories about psychics, but we were desperate.
When Linda calls Jordan at his home in upstate New York, all he asks for is a photo of the victim. No other information.
When I work a police case, I take a picture of the person involved in the case, and I look at that picture and mentally perceive them as if it's like an intense daydream or a video going on in my head. Sometimes it moves rather slowly, but most of the time it moves very, very rapidly. It's very much like I'm walking with that person.
December 2004, Phil Jordan and Linda Hunt talk over the phone. Phil records the session. What he says next could reignite the case, but will the police listen?
Some sort of a blunt instrument, but having a sharp edge on one side of it.
Thomaston, Georgia, a man is bludgeoned to death in his own bed. After 2 years, the case is cold. Desperate for answers, the family contacts psychic Phil Jordan, who immediately zeroes in on the murder weapon.
Some sort of a blunt instrument, but having a sharp edge on one side of it. There's going to be a white one-story building. Maybe would have been doctor's offices or something of that nature. And it feels like there's got to be a man connected with that somehow has knowledge of or was involved in the commission of the crime.
A white building. A blunt object. What does it mean?
When I hung up that phone, I was on cloud nine. I knew we were fixing to get some help with Tom's murder.
Thomas was a twin, and I can't perceive anything like that happening to my twin or a sibling and having it be unresolved. So I felt, for Linda's sake as well as for Thomas's sake, I had to do what I could to help resolve this case.
But will the police take the word of a psychic seriously?
I wasn't comfortable talking with Phil. I was always taught the scientific way of doing a case. You know, going for the evidence, going for the fibers, going for the fingerprints. Someone that saw something that didn't see something, I never believed. But we heard several things that nobody else would have known about the case except for the ones that were working the case. We still felt that Mary Ann was the key suspect, but still in 2004 we did not have the proper evidence to convict her, but we were still hopeful.
7825, code 6, 105 North Avenue.
Although skeptical, the police have nothing to lose. They decide to bring Jordan to Thomaston.
First place we went to was the location of the murder. No one had lived there since the murder.
7825, code 6.
We allowed Phil to be on his own. We let him guide us.
You immediately begin to feel the morbidity, the darkness of what happened there. My psychic self takes over, and I walk through the house as if the house is furnished, as if people are living there, as if I'm with them on the day and time that the crime took place.
He kept seeing dollar signs. He mentioned that the reason that Thomas was killed was a good possibility that the motive was for money. When Phil, he was giving us the impression of what he saw, he didn't know that we knew about the insurance policy. We didn't tell him that we knew about the insurance policy.
The police know that Mary Ann took out a $25,000 life insurance policy 7 months before Tom's death. But that on its own isn't enough to build a case.
And to the left, there's a room that's intriguing to me, psychically intriguing. There's something about that room. So I go in and I stand in the middle of the room, and I realize this is where this man died.
He ended up taking us into the room where the murder had occurred without us even telling him where it was. He was able to tell us where the bed was laying, how Thomas was laying in the bed that nobody else knew about. It kind of hit home. It really did.
Now the psychic seems to be channeling the victim.
Suddenly, I'm hit in the head. I can't move. This is somebody I knew, somebody that I loved. Why are they doing this to me?
Even more chilling. Now he becomes the killer.
I realize it's a woman. She's horrified herself. She's doing it and amazed that she can do it.
How the person was swinging the item. He gave us the picture of a hammer, where she might have stood. nobody knew at the time other than us.
Suddenly I had this feeling that I've got to go to a different location. I leave the room, tell the detectives we've got to get in the car, and I will direct you to where we have to go.
He wanted to get in the car and drive. He said he had a strong feeling that he needed to take us somewhere.
I just wait and see why I'm going where I'm going.
He'd never been here before in his life, didn't know the town, didn't know the streets. He told me to start turning at certain roads.
Now we have to go 2 blocks. We'll turn left. I say we have to go to the end of the street. And turn right.
We turn into a driveway, and I guess this is when I get cold chills, just thinking about looking back over it. At the same time, I was getting cold chills then.
There's something about that apartment that is connected to this crime.
In Thomaston, Georgia, psychic investigator Phil Jordan is helping the police find the killer of Thomas Bragg. Jordan leads them to a house. But why this one?
We turn into a driveway, which was an apartment complex. We pulled right in front of Mary Ann Bragg's front door, where Mary Ann Bragg was living at this time. How?
And I tell them the second apartment from the end is psychically intriguing to me. There's something about that apartment that is connected to this crime, and there is no doubt in my mind.
That was just amazing.
Without being told anything, Jordan has taken the cops straight to their original prime suspect's new home. They are convinced now, more than ever, that Mary Ann Bragg killed her husband. Before leaving Thomaston, Jordan offers the police more intriguing psychic clues.
I sense copper, Louisiana, Texas, when I left Georgia, they said this case is going to end in conviction, and I knew that it would be resolved.
Then, a few weeks later, the cryptic clues, copper, Louisiana, and Texas, become clear when an anonymous phone tip leads the police to Mary Ann's best friend.
And her name was Penny Carter. So we thought, copper, Penny. And when we started looking for Miss Carter, she was no longer in Georgia.
When they first interviewed Penny after the murder, she said nothing. Now, guided by Phil Jordan, the police track her down in Beaumont, right on the Texas-Louisiana border.
Phil was on the track again. We were probably less than 30 miles from the Louisiana border and on the other side of Texas where we located her. We took her to one of the local police departments where we sat down and interviewed her.
She drops a bombshell.
Penny had been told by Mary Ann, not on one occasion, but 2 occasions, that she had killed Thomas.
Phil Jordan's extraordinary insights and Penny Carter's explosive new information reignite the case.
Take everyone's case file, everyone's interview, and categorize everything and get everything in a workable order, and then see what you have.
Investigators re-examine Mary Ann's alibi for the time of the murder, a psychiatric appointment in LaGrange. Mary Ann's psychiatrist has steadfastly refused to break doctor-patient confidentiality.
White, one-story building, maybe would have been doctor's offices. Got to be a man connected with that somehow has knowledge of the crime.
But could the psychic be right? Does the key to this case lie in his session notes with Mary Ann on the morning of the murder?
We were able to get the judge to issue the search warrant. We thought the information that was involved was more important than the patient confidentiality. And we were right.
That was a pivotal piece of information. She's reporting to her psychiatrist, my husband's dead before the body's been discovered.
I thought she was telling me the truth, and I believed her for a long time.
Mary Ann Bragg is arrested on November 7th, 2005. 10 months later, the trial begins.
Miss Bragg, did you kill your husband?
No, sir.
The prosecution argues that Mary Ann Bragg struck her husband repeatedly on the left side of the head with a blunt instrument, covered his head with a pillow, and left for her doctor's appointment in LaGrange. As the trial unfolds, it becomes clear that Phil Jordan's visions were dead on. First, the cryptic connection to copper when Penny Carter tells the court what Mary Ann told her.
What would you do or say if I killed Tom?
Did you go to the police?
No, I didn't. I was scared.
Then, the doctor's notes from the morning of Tom Bragg's murder.
Did Mary Ann Bragg see Dr. Andrews that day?
The notes say that she did.
Heath English is the assistant district attorney.
The doctor's log indicated when he met with Mary Ann, she was quite upset. The reason for her state that morning was that her husband had been found dead. At that point in time, no one had contacted Mary Ann Bragg.
And finally, the motive.
The main motive in this particular case was money.
After a 4-day trial, Mary Ann Bragg is found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Her lawyers immediately file an appeal.
When talking to people, and they ask me who is the most cold and diabolical and ruthless person I've ever encountered, I say the name Mary Ann Bragg.
Without the visions of psychic Phil Jordan, the evidence leading to her conviction may never have been found. How did he see what no one else could?
I think many times people's skepticism allows them to close a door that they may have wished could have been left open.
Her statements to Penny, the statements made to the doctor, helped bring everything together. And without those two, to this day, I don't think you have a complete picture.
Dealing with Phil throughout this case, it opened my mind to think more outside the box.
Phil Jordan, with the help of the detectives, I give all the credit to. Phil Jordan is my hero.
This time on Psychic Investigators. A wealthy businesswoman vanishes on a shopping trip to Tucson.
We've seen a number of homicides, robberies, kidnappings.
Is it kidnapping or something else? The police have their suspicions, but no proof.
He was tall and handsome. He could talk snow off a snowflake, and he took over her life.
A psychic warns the police to act fast.
I just got a really, really bad feeling.
Or the truth could stay buried forever. Tucson, Arizona, 70 miles from the Mexican border. a city shaped by the surrounding desert. A dramatic backdrop to the story that was about to unfold on December 13th, 2004. At 6 p.m., 67-year-old Ta Benderly frantically approaches the security desk at Park Place Mall. His partner is missing. He tells the guards he dropped Loretta Bowersock off at Dillard's department store at 2 o'clock and arranged to pick her up at 4. He's been looking for her for the last 2 hours. The police are called, and Detective Fabian Pacheco is put in charge of the case.
Tucson, unfortunately, has seen its fair share of homicides, robberies, kidnappings. We do take each and every one of those investigations seriously.
Immediately, Pacheco recognizes the name of the missing woman. Loretta Bowersock and her daughter Terry own a successful chain of furniture stores. Their commercials have been on the air for 20 years.
Thanks to you and Mom, Terry's consignment furniture has expanded again. There's a beautiful Bernhardt sofa, and you saved $1,400.
Police kick the search into high gear.
They had searched all of the Dillard store to include the Park Place Mall, the surrounding neighborhoods, without any success.
At first, Pacheco wonders if Loretta may have been abducted for ransom. After all, she is a high-profile millionaire.
Ta Benderly made some indications regarding a possibility of Loretta being kidnapped by some individuals in a white van. And this information further heightened our response to this investigation.
Ta calls Loretta's daughter in Phoenix.
I jumped in my car and drove down to Tucson in 45 minutes, which is normally about an hour and a half. I just remember feeling very frantic. The fear of her being kidnapped was probably the worst for me. I started getting hold of all of the local newspaper because I'd been on the news a lot. And I got pictures of her off of Ta's computer, and we started making posters right away.
Terry and Loretta were like Arizona's success story. We had watched them grow up on television. They started their business together, the consignment business. They were in our living rooms for 20 years.
My mother was a very smart lady. She was very attractive, very talented, full of life.
For 18 years, Loretta has shared that life with Ta Benderly. The story Ta tells police is that they left Tempe, the Phoenix suburb where they live, that morning for a 5-day vacation. They checked into the Residence Inn in Tucson at 12:30 p.m. and went to the mall at 2 o'clock. Police check mall security cameras and make a startling discovery.
We saw that there was no Loretta to be found anywhere within that video.
Does that mean there's something wrong with Ta's story? Ta said he searched for Loretta in the mall for 2 hours.
The video surveillance actually shows them coming into the Dillard's department store and almost immediately going straight to the customer service counter and reporting her as a missing person.
Police get a search warrant for Ta's hotel room and ask Terry to look through her mother's belongings.
There was a lot of stuff all over the bed that he had taken down, guns and ammunition taken from my mother's house. There was a lot of valuables there. But I think probably the most crucial moment was when I saw the jewelry. That probably was the first moment where I thought this wasn't just kidnapping, this was something else.
But what? Police search his vehicle and make an incriminating find: a shovel and a pickaxe.
Those are red flags right away, especially looking at these tools that look like they have dirt and dust on them, like they've been used.
Detective Pacheco contacts the police in Tempe. They get a warrant to search Ta and Loretta's home. And in the garage, another disturbing find. Detective Trent Luckow is with the Tempe police.
They found a van parked there, and in the back of the van they found a purse And inside that purse, there were credit cards and a checkbook and ID that all came back to Loretta Bowersock.
The purse, the pickaxe, the valuables, it all points to foul play.
Based on evidence that we had, we were confident that Loretta had never made it to Tucson.
Tucson police bring Taw in for questioning. He's defensive and, curiously, unconcerned about his missing partner.
You need to respect the fact that I'm trying to give you information in as clear a form as I can. I was not prepared to have to account minute for minute for my time.
Plain and simple is she never made it down here. This whole thing is gonna come down like a deck of cards.
The police believe they have a murder on their hands, but without a body, they cannot lay charges. They let Taw Benderly go and put him under surveillance. But Terry isn't content to just sit back and wait. She hears from a friend about a psychic who might be able to help. Mary Ann Morgan is a medium with international credentials and her own radio program.
I'm clairvoyant, clairaudient, which means I talk to those on the other side. The capability of like jumping time with my mind, like look at everything on a TV screen and it plays out in front of me.
Terry calls Mary Ann at her home in Bethany, Oklahoma.
It's never easy when you tell somebody that they love has crossed over, especially when they've been murdered.
Arizona businesswoman Loretta Bowersock has been missing for 2 days when a psychic shares a devastating vision with the woman's daughter. Not only is she dead, she's been murdered.
I think that it took a little while for me to get through, and it was hard to hear those things.
Using her paranormal powers, Mary Ann Morgan claims to see Loretta's last moments.
I kept getting all these visions of screaming and yelling in a fight. And then I saw somebody coming up from behind and putting something over somebody's head. Then I saw somebody suffocating, fighting to save their life. And the more she fought, the worse it was. And then eventually there was just no life at all.
Then the killer appears before the psychic.
When I started seeing this man, I described him in depth and in detail to Terry, and she said, yes, this is the person that her mother had been involved with for a very long time. And I said, Terry, you don't know this man. This man has lied to you. He's got all kinds of money problems, all kinds of financial things that he's created. He's a con artist. And she understood that. However, she really didn't want to believe it.
And there's another psychic bombshell for Terry.
I saw Loretta Bowersock open the door and her be handed a set of papers, and I saw how angry she got, and I knew that the house was in foreclosure, and this was something that she had no idea about.
I said, that's crazy. There's no way that my mom would let her house go into foreclosure. She loved her house.
Could the psychic be right? Terry decides to tell the police about the foreclosure.
We don't use psychics. We're more into the modern forensics, the DNA, the fingerprinting, certain other things that we can do as homicide detectives. But psychics, I'd never used one. I was skeptical.
And I said, you know, all I know is there seemed to be some things that she described that seemed to be accurate. And with us not having any leads coming in, I said it really couldn't hurt.
We did a financial investigation, and that's where we realized this home was in foreclosure. Nobody knew that. That was really astounding, and began to think, well, maybe the psychic could be of service.
In the meantime, the police continue to pull apart Taw's alibi. Taw says he and Loretta left Tempe at 10 a.m. and checked into their Tucson hotel at 12:30. However, the desk clerk says he checked in at 2:48, alone. And his credit card and bank receipts also tell a different story. At 11 a.m., he used his credit card to buy 2 baseball caps at the outlet mall. And at 1:15, he bought 2 sandwiches at the truck stop, just 4 miles down the highway.
We are now faced with a 2-hour block of time that we're trying to determine where exactly was he. And it's very important to us to account for that time.
Police think that during that time, Taw was busy burying Loretta's body somewhere in the Sonoran Desert.
We were headed in a direction to prosecute Taw Benderly for the murder of Loretta Bowersock.
Then, an explosive turn of events. 1 week after Loretta's disappearance, the psychic has another revelation.
All of a sudden flashed before me this vision of Taw Benderly. And I just got a really, really bad feeling. Either this man's going to kill himself or he's going to try to escape.
The net is tightening. All the evidence of Loretta's disappearance points to Taw Benderly. The psychic immediately calls Detective Pacheco.
We were very concerned for Taw Benderly's welfare. Obviously, we don't want anyone to harm themselves. And most importantly, we still don't know where Loretta is. If something ever happens to Taw, the chances of finding Loretta are gone along with him.
At Mary Ann's insistence, the police check up on Taw. He seems fine. The next day, Terry calls Taw several times, but he doesn't answer. In a panic, she contacts the police.
At that point, police probably need to go out there and make sure that he's okay and that he's fine, or that he had not fled. When police entered the house, they found Taw hanging from an extension cord in the garage.
All Taw Benderly left was a suicide note saying he has gone to join Loretta, but nothing about how she died or where her body is located.
What a coward. Not only did this man kill himself, he took all the clues with him on where Loretta was. He never said, here's what I did and here's where she is. This SOB went to hell not telling anybody where Loretta was.
The psychic was dead right about Taw's suicide. But can she help to find Loretta Bowersock? Taw Benderly has taken the secret of Loretta Bowersock's burial place with him to the grave.
Knowing that he had just committed suicide, I lost all the hope of finding out really what happened, if he'd been the one that killed her, and where was she.
When I found out that Taw Benderly had committed suicide, I was thinking about what Mary Ann had told me. I was thinking, what else could we have done? Once the main suspect is dead, there's nobody to prosecute, the case is closed. The only thing left in this investigation to do is to find the remains of Loretta.
But where is she? 3 weeks after her disappearance, the police are no closer to finding her body.
I needed to know what had happened. You know, how was she killed? Was she shot? Was she cut up? Had he bashed her? When you don't have how somebody died, it just makes you crazy.
Desperate, Terry invites psychic Mary Ann Morgan to Tempe. Maybe she can see something the police have missed. They start in the place where Taw took his own life, the garage of Loretta and Ta's soon-to-be repossessed house.
We went out to the garage. A very, very cold entity came to be present with us. I said, Terry, Ta's here in the garage with us. And about that time, he jumped into my mind, and he started screaming. He says, she's in the desert. She's in the desert. I told you she's in the desert. It was just very powerful and overwhelming. I knew this was going to be very hard to tell Terry, but unfortunately, I saw her mother wrapped in plastic, almost mummified. And I saw her buried in a very shallow grave.
The desert, a likely place to dump a body. Police already suspect Ta has buried Loretta in the Sonoran, but the psychic sees specific, unique details.
I could see that there was blue. I felt like I was surrounded with blue. And then I heard children laughing. And I could see and I could hear children going around and around on a merry-go-round. So I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be one of the biggest keys to this, is that she is not even 150 yards from this merry-go-round.
A merry-go-round, the color blue. Marianne shares the details with the police, who have a lead of their own. Ta made a cell phone call around the time police think Loretta was buried. Detective Landon Rankin of the Pinal County Sheriff's Office led the search for Loretta Bowersock.
Mr. Benderly's cell phone had pinged on a certain cell phone tower in central Arizona in our jurisdiction of Pinal County.
The cell phone records show Ta had made a phone call at 12:30 in the Sonoran Desert, 94 miles from the hotel in Tucson, where he told police he was. And he had made that call during the 2-hour time gap that he couldn't account for.
I believe it was his dentist had called, so Mr. Benderly opened up his cell phone, returned the phone call. So that basically put his footprint in our area.
The police think Ta was burying Loretta's body in this area of the desert. But even with hundreds of volunteers, they're looking for a needle in a vast haystack.
People who ask the question, how hard is it to find a body in the desert, have never been to the desert. The desert is so enormous. I mean, even with clues, you can't find a body in the desert.
6 months pass, and there's no sign of Loretta. With limited resources, the police halt the search. But Terry Bowersock refuses to give up. For the next few months, each Saturday, locals and tourists alike scour the desert for Loretta Bowersock's body.
Every day that I'd be out searching, I remember I would just think of her and just how important it was not to spend the rest of my life wondering. I wasn't about to let her stay in the desert. That wasn't going to happen. I was going to find her.
Terry was searching every day. I finally just had to tell her that it was not her karma to find the body, that hikers were going to be in the desert about a year later from the time that she disappeared, and that they would come upon the body.
In January 2006, just 150 feet from an abandoned motel, a family out hiking stumbles on a human skull. Dental records confirm these are the remains of Loretta Bowersock.
The teeth that I had noticed had fillings. More specifically, was like I saw some porcelain veneers on her front teeth.
When I was told that she was finally found, it was like, oh, thank God. It was a relief to know, I could stop chasing. I did need to have closure. It was amazing when I drove out there. There was a blue motel. It's like when you got there, you went, how did we not see this much blue somewhere? But we stopped just short of that, 5 miles, before that area.
An autopsy reveals the actual cause of death, asphyxiation by a plastic bag.
When I was first at scene and saw the plastic, I thought it might have been just skin. But we went to the autopsy and it saw that the plastic bag was completely over her head. It came full circle with Mary Ann's prediction. It was exactly as she had said.
The police reconstruct Loretta's last hours alive. On December 13th, Loretta discovers the foreclosure notice on the house. At 3:33, she makes the first of 17 phone calls to the bank. They confirm her worst fears. Her partner of 18 years has been embezzling the mortgage payments. When she confronts Taw, he panics, fearing his web of lies is about to be exposed. He sneaks up behind her, places a plastic bag over her head, and suffocates her, just as the psychic predicted.
After being involved in this case, I can say that definitely I'm less skeptical of employing the services of a psychic.
I've never used a psychic until this, but the information she gave was pinpoint accurate. A psychic gives us insights that we don't have.
When this case came to a close and I got the phone call that they had found Loretta Bowersock, it was just a sigh of relief that it was finally over.
Taw Benderly was never tried for the murder of Loretta Bowersock. A dead man can't be put on trial.
I felt so bad that I hadn't done something, to rescue her. I hadn't taken her out of the house earlier. I've learned there's a lot of women out there that are lonely and desperate for love. And that, unfortunately, there's men that will take advantage of that. And so I would just simply say to women, if you feel like there's something wrong with the person you're with and you haven't checked them out, do.
This time on Psychic Investigators. When a local dentist is found brutally murdered in his home, everyone is shocked.
And I said, well, what's so bad that I can't go in? And they said, you really don't want to see this.
The police suspect his closest friends.
Now, all of a sudden, we're under a light for everybody to watch our every move.
Until a pair of psychic sisters share a disturbing vision.
I felt a lot of blood pooling around my feet, and I had a flash of a bat.
And all of a sudden, spirit guides just screamed out, law enforcement.
Blairsville, Pennsylvania, an hour's drive from Pittsburgh. A factory town which once turned out the steel and glass that helped build America. This is small town USA, where life is comfortable and safe. At least that's what everyone thought, until a spring day in 2006. On the afternoon of April 13th, a teenage boy makes a shocking discovery at his next-door neighbor's house.
He was so upset, and I'm like, what is wrong? What is wrong? I thought maybe Zachary got hurt or what have you. He's like, you have to come now. It's John. He's dead.
Melissa Yuse's neighbor is Dr. John Jelinek, a local dentist. She immediately calls 911.
When I walked up to the door, I saw there was blood on the outside of the door and the window. And right inside the foyer, there was blood all over the floor, all over the walls, all over the floor.
In the living room, Leidig discovers a man's body lying in a pool of blood, his throat slashed from ear to ear.
Immediately, I knew that it had to be a homicide. No one could have done that to themselves.
Corporal Janelle Leidig has been with the Blairsville police for 6 years, but this is her first homicide.
It just looked like there was a violent struggle and there's just blood that went everywhere.
She immediately calls in the Pittsburgh FBI to help collect forensic evidence. Throughout the house, the killer has left a trail of blood.
There were footprints going out through the living room, through the dining room, out the back door.
The footprints may belong to the killer, but he's wiped his fingerprints clean. Investigators notice there is no sign of forced entry. Nothing of value appears to be missing. Yelnick's 4 guns, stored upstairs, remain undisturbed. Corporal Leidig verifies that the crime scene hasn't been contaminated.
Everybody who was on scene, I had them give me their shoes, and we made shoe prints of what they had on before I would even let them leave. And we compared them to the shoe prints that were found going through the dining room and kitchen, and none of them matched.
The victim's hands are bagged to preserve any trace evidence under his fingernails. As the crime scene is photographed, the police conduct an exhaustive search of the victim's house and neighborhood in hopes of turning up more clues.
We sealed off the area as far as you could see or hear. And I had officers walk up and down roads, looking at areas of, like, the grassy areas, the bushes everywhere, to see if we could find any kind of murder weapon. We searched the entire house, and we just were unable to find any type of murder weapon.
Outside, Blairsville is in a state of shock.
The word had already started to get out, and people were coming to find out what was going on.
One of those people is the victim's cousin, Marianne Clark.
And as I got to his house, I asked, I wanted to go in. And they said, you can't go in. And I said, well, what's so bad that I can't go in? And they said, well, he's been murdered, and you really don't want to see this.
Melissa Use, John's next-door neighbor, has been his friend since the 9th grade.
He was an awesome guy. He was an awesome father who loved his son very much. He was a good neighbor, and he also made a difference in our community.
John was probably the kindest, most gentle, generous, fun-loving person you would ever meet. If you met John, you loved John.
John Yelenick had recently moved back to the neighborhood after splitting with his wife of 9 years.
The divorce was a really bitter divorce. Every time they would get close to a settlement, Michelle always wanted something more,
including custody of their 9-year-old son. But after 5 long years, Michelle and John finally agreed to a settlement.
John finally saw an end to this dark tunnel that he was going through.
But John never got a chance to sign the papers.
I don't think anyone in Blairsville had any idea that this could be anything other than random. There was no reason for John Yelenick to be murdered.
Jennifer Mealy follows the sensational story for the local television news.
That's when you saw the neighbors start to lock their doors at night, something they'd never done before, keeping their porch lights on and watching things a little more closely.
Living right beside John's house, my kids were terrified. We didn't sleep for, I bet, over a week. We were just so scared to be in our home.
In the days following the chilling crime, the police canvassed the area. A neighbor reports hearing two men fighting about money in the pre-dawn hours. This casts a new light on evidence found at the scene. Evidence pointing directly at the victim's next-door neighbors, the Uses, the family who first raised the alarm.
We were on the coffee table. We found a check that was made out from the Uses to Mr. Jelinek. They didn't want him to cash it yet. So Mr. Hughes was a suspect. He was, I guess, a person of interest is how we call it.
Police take the victim's neighbors in for questioning and grill them about the uncashed check.
I was going to open a bakery here in Blairsville, and John had given me $15,000 to help open my bakery.
But Melissa says he asked for the money back suddenly, saying he needed it to make a tax payment.
And I wrote him a check. I said, I only have $14,000 at this time, and then I'll get you the other $1,000 within the next couple weeks.
The police aren't convinced by the story.
Not only were we losing a dear friend of ours, but now we were actually being considered as somebody that could have done this horrible crime to him.
With her husband now a prime suspect, Melissa is desperate to prove his innocence. A month after the murder, she visits two psychic sisters in search of answers. Hosts of a regular psychic tea party, Suzanne and Jean Vincent claim to be guided by the spirits of the dead.
My psychic insights come to me in a variety of different ways. I start seeing flashes of light. I start seeing scenery and images.
I might hear or taste something that would all be symbolic to what is this person all about, or what is the situation all about.
And I also have a spirit guide who accompanies me during a psychic session. I see a picture of him that kind of emerges, kind of like a negative, and he gives me these images and these visions of the people that I'm trying to communicate with on the other side.
Melissa tells the psychic pair nothing about the murder.
And the first thing my spirit guide said to me was there was a grief cloud all around this lady. I just said, oh my goodness, your boys found a body? And she had said, yes, they did. The energy around her was saying that someone might even suspect her husband of doing this gruesome crime, of killing this neighbor.
I was just simply amazed on what they could see that was going on with our family.
The psychics have seen the murder of John Jelinek, but can they find his killer?
Melissa just kind of casually said, well, who do you think killed my neighbor? And all of a sudden, immediately, the spirit guides just screamed out, law enforcement.
When 39-year-old dentist John Jelinek is murdered, his neighbors become suspects. Desperate, they turn to a pair of clairvoyant sisters who say the real killer works in law enforcement.
I called Suzanne and Jean and asked them if they would be interested in coming to Blairsville to do a reading over in John's house.
They agree. 3 months after the killing, they visit the crime scene.
As I was going to the backyard, I was feeling a very strong pull that the person who had done this to John had parked in the back.
I had a vision of a maroonish, reddish SUV stalking John Jelinek's house.
Hoping that the psychics can help to solve his murder, John's family has given the group permission to enter the house. No longer a restricted crime scene, inside little has changed since the murder. Blood, though faded, is still visible.
I was immediately pulled to the dining room, and I looked right down, and I said, whatever happened, happened right here. The energy was very heavy and thick. I was seeing stab wounds. I had seen his neck like jagged and then a straight line. I also felt a lot of blood pooling around my feet.
Then, Jean claims to see the killer.
John's spirit had drawn me to a shoe print, and as I put my hand over it, I started seeing a person with red hair, someone with light eyes, fair complexion, freckles, and I had a flash of a badge.
And all of a sudden, these spirit guides just screamed out, "Law enforcement."
John's saying, "He killed me."
Melissa is stunned.
I knew in my heart who I thought had committed this crime and how much it resembled that person. And the details were just overwhelming.
That person is Kevin Foley. He's been dating John Yelenik's ex-wife for 2 years. He has red hair and drives an SUV. And he's a state trooper.
He was already the person of interest because he was the boyfriend of John Yelenik's ex-wife. But the fact that he was a trooper made it difficult to believe that even somebody would do that. But it also made me think that he wouldn't have messed up and he wouldn't have left footprints. But once I got the psychic's information, we wanted to look into it a little bit more.
Police discovered that there had been bad blood between John Yelenik and Kevin Foley.
John Yelenik had frequent arguments with his ex-wife, Michelle. So John Yelenik and Kevin would have words, even to the point where the police were called.
The trouble is, Foley is a fellow officer, and they have to tread carefully. And their hands are tied while they await results of the blood and the DNA evidence.
That was taking the longest. It was like excruciating for not only the public, but for us.
In the meantime, analysis of the bloody shoe print has eliminated one suspect. Tom Hughes wears a shoe a full 3 sizes larger than the killer's.
It was a relief to know that Tom was cleared of being a suspect at that point.
Her family name cleared, Melissa wants police to meet with the psychics.
I was very skeptical of psychics, but I said I would go. I said I would, go down to the house and keep it in the back of my mind that maybe it would work, maybe it would help.
4 months after the death of John Yelenik, the Vincent sisters meet the Blairsville police at the murdered dentist's home.
They gave me information about a reddish-colored SUV. I was taken back. Kevin Foley drives a maroon-colored SUV-type vehicle.
As we were walking through the kitchen, John's spirit yelled out and said, "Pay close attention to the footprints." It appeared to me that it was an expensive running shoe, and also I could tell the size. It was like maybe a size 10.
There's no way they could have known that. Even if they got a tape measure, there's no way they could have known it because it was faded by then.
The psychics offer a prediction. The killer did leave evidence at the crime scene. Evidence they believe will be his downfall.
John Yelenik has DNA of the killer underneath his fingernails. And we told the police, you need to pursue this.
Would the long-awaited DNA results be the key to the case? Then, a final perplexing revelation.
Over the footprint, I had a flash of dog tags. Whoever had these dog tags helped kill John Yelenik. This person has a military background.
The psychics have given the police more to look into. But will their clues lead the police to the evidence they need to arrest one of their own? 4 months have passed since the murder of dentist John Yelenik. The police suspect a state trooper as the killer. Their suspicions are confirmed by 2 psychic sisters who offer more clues.
The psychics actually gave us things to work on. The dog tags, the military, the SUV, and the footprints.
The psychics say their vision of dog tags means the killer has a connection to the military.
I was sort of skeptical about that, thinking that, yeah, they got the car right, they got the possible trooper right, but He wasn't in the military. He didn't have dog tags. We looked into it further, and indeed, he did have a military background.
The police ramp up their investigation into the state trooper and make a damning discovery.
We found video evidence from local gas stations that Kevin Foley was driving through town. He didn't have to travel through Blairsville to get back home, and yet he did.
Kevin Foley had means. He had motive. And now it's clear he had opportunity. But police still don't have enough hard evidence to make an arrest. And Foley's not talking. He's hired a lawyer.
We were unable to get to Trooper Kevin Foley. He was not cooperating with us. So we requested State Attorney General's office to step in and assist us in investigating the crime.
A local police department, like the Blairsville Police Department, does not have the resources or the manpower to investigate a murder for months or years on end. So it became quite apparent that they were going to need help. The concern was, should they call in the state police to investigate this, considering one of their prime suspects was a state police trooper? And that's why both the state police and Blairsville police agreed that an independent agency needed to be brought in to investigate this, hence the Attorney General.
This was a very circumstantial case. This wasn't a case with a confession or with an eyewitness. So it had to be built piece by piece.
Deputy Attorney General Anthony Krastik brings some much-needed muscle to the case.
One of the key pieces of evidence in this case certainly were the bloody shoe prints. This was a shoe print made from a Asics Gel Creed or Gel Creed Plus between a size 10 and a 12.5.
Only 25,000 pairs were ever sold in America. Krastik learns that Kevin Foley owns a pair.
That company had a discount for officers. Kevin Foley was one of their best customers. He bought a lot of things from them, including the exact size and make that could have made those shoe impressions.
While there's mounting circumstantial evidence pointing to Kevin Foley, there's still nothing to place him directly at the crime scene. And then
the DNA results came back and showed that there was a match to Kevin Foley.
Kevin Foley's DNA had been trapped underneath his victim's fingernails, just as the psychics predicted. 17 months after the murder of the Blairsville dentist, the police finally arrest Trooper Kevin Foley.
There was shock throughout the community. Half the community didn't want to believe, couldn't believe, that a state trooper could actually commit a murder. The other half had no doubt it was him. This was a 1.5 year long investigation. Clearly, this wasn't going to be simple. This wasn't going to be an easy conviction. The preliminary hearing itself, where the police have to lay out all the evidence they have against the suspect, took hours. We weren't even sure it would get that far. We thought perhaps a judge might throw it out right there, but he didn't.
At the trial, prosecutors argue that Kevin Foley had ample motive.
The jurors found out that Dr. John Yelnick's divorce was just 1 day away from being finalized.
If that happened, Foley's live-in girlfriend, Yelnick's estranged wife, would lose $2,500 a month in support. And Foley had another motive.
He had it in his mind that John Yelnick was a bad man, a child molester.
During Yelnick's bitter divorce, his estranged wife made accusations. She even took John to court. Although he was cleared of all charges, Foley never stopped believing John was a monster.
Kevin Foley made no secret of his ill will towards John Yelnick. He just would tell anybody that John Yelnick was evil, should be killed, even asked one trooper to help him kill him.
The prosecution paints the jury a vivid picture of the events of April 13th. At around 1 a.m., Foley arrived at Yelnick's house and entered through the back door.
You don't have to step in my house.
no one out here. Get out of my house.
Foley attacked Jelinek, slashing him in the face and chest. He pushed Jelinek's head through the front door window, nearly decapitating him in the process. The pathologist testifies it took up to 9 minutes for John Jelinek to bleed to death. Throughout the 8-day trial, Foley maintains his innocence. But on March 18, 2009, he's convicted of first-degree murder in the death of John Jelinek. He's sentenced to life in prison with no chance for parole. He is appealing the verdict.
He was the most wonderful person in the world. He died the most horrible death. And tonight, this is his night. We love you, John, and we miss you. We're never forgetting.
For John's friend and neighbor, Foley's conviction means an end to a nightmare. And she credits the Vincent sisters for their part in solving the case.
I believe that the psychics were helpful in this case. I felt like it was just incredible, the information that they knew. What we wanted to do from the very beginning was to make sure that we found out who did this to our friend and make sure that justice was served.
This time on Psychic Investigators. In Napa Valley, 2 young women are stabbed to death in their home.
Large amounts of blood, just horrendous.
A third roommate survives.
In a few minutes' time, my entire life was changed.
How could this happen in our Napa?
Police have the forensics, but no one to tie it to.
Who am I missing? Who did I forget? What am I overlooking?
A psychic says, look closer to home.
They knew this person. There was no question about it.
Napa Valley, the heart of California's idyllic wine country. A place of vineyards, breathtaking views, the good life, and if nothing else, a safe place to live. And then, Halloween 2004.
This is 911 emergency. What are you reporting?
Oh my God, we got attacked.
Who attacked you?
I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Most of my roommates got hurt. Oh my God. I think they're dying. I just started dying. Do you know who might have done this? Oh God.
When the police arrive at the house on Dorset Street, they find 2 women dead. The scene is so gruesome, a female officer feels ill and has to leave. More police descend on the house.
The homicides had occurred in the upstairs of the residence. As we approached the staircase, there was an enormous amount of blood.
Detective Kirk Primo was a 14-year veteran with the Napa Police Department. Not wanting to contaminate the evidence on the stairs, Detective Primo uses a ladder to get his first look at the carnage.
Large amounts of blood. Just horrendous.
A double homicide. Leslie Mazzara and Adrian Insomnia, both 26.
I always live by the rule of the crime scene's always at least twice the size as what it appears.
Outside the house, one of the first pieces of evidence Detective Primo finds is a pile of cigarette butts.
They didn't appear to be weathered. They didn't appear to have been there for a long time.
The lone survivor of the vicious attack is 28-year-old Lauren Mianza. The bedrooms of Adrian and Leslie are on the second floor. Lauren's bedroom is on the first floor at the back of the house.
I got a phone call, so I went into my room and took it, and I heard Adrian say goodnight, and that was about 10, I think. I went to bed about 11, and probably by 11:30, the house was pretty quiet.
By midnight, the young women are sound asleep.
I had never heard anything like it. I knew right away that it was something awful. And then I went to my door and stood kind of in the doorway under the stairs. I heard a male flying down the stairs. I figured I was next, not knowing what to do. I just ran into the backyard. I've never, ever felt that terrified, like I was in a horror movie. I thought I was going to die. It was quiet except for screaming. I heard him kind of leave the house. Adrian, which I knew was her voice, she'd stopped screaming, but she was calling out for help. There's blood everywhere. Adrian just lying down next to her bed. She was alive still, but she was, I could tell in her eyes, she was gone. I had never really seen someone die before. To the right of Adrian was Leslie lying face down in a pile of clothing. I just turned around and went down the stairs, and I called 911. In a few minutes' time, my entire life was changed. I'd lost my friends, my roommates, and I'd been left untouched.
The only one who lived to tell the tale, police turned to Lauren for answers. Who would want to kill her roommates? Leslie Mazzara had moved to Napa about 6 months ago and landed a job at the vineyard of Hollywood legend, Francis Ford Coppola.
Leslie was very, very outgoing and very spunky. I'd never met anyone like her. Just warm and just Southern hospitality, everything. Guys really liked her. Everybody kind of was drawn to her.
Adrian and Sonia grew up in the area and was an engineer for the city of Napa.
Adrian was different. She was much more, she was mellow, very good friend to people, just very smart individual.
These girls were tremendously well-liked, had tons and tons of friends, very social. There was no obvious motive that stood out as to why this crime may have happened. This was not going to be an easy case to solve.
For days, crime scene investigators worked the house. The killer entered through a push-up window. There they find fibers and what they hope is his blood. Nothing appears stolen. He's left no fingerprints and no weapon. All the evidence is sent for testing.
Well, the first reaction from the community was just shock and disbelief that something like this could happen in our quiet little Napa.
Marcia Dorgan covered the story for the Napa Valley Register.
People were worried, they were scared. I mean, they didn't know if they had a serial killer out there running around.
But the police don't think the murders were random. They think this is a crime of passion.
A pattern of the blood evidence that was collected, the anger and aggression.
The autopsy results support their theory. Cause of death, multiple stab wounds.
Focus was that the killer may have been an acquaintance or someone known to Leslie, as Leslie did leave a more active social life.
Leslie just attracted males. She had a lot of men interested in her.
2 weeks later, the town of Napa holds a candlelight vigil for the 2 murdered women. Police methodically question hundreds of their male acquaintances, starting with their inner circle. But after 3 weeks, the police are no closer to identifying the killer.
Daylight savings had started, so our days were very short, unfortunately. So any darkness, I couldn't stand.
Lauren and I, from the day of this incident, we met or talked on the phone daily. Lauren was very eager and very helpful in the investigation and wanted to be kept abreast.
So much evidence to process, and so many potential suspects, the police are overwhelmed. And then something unexpected. A friend of Lauren's makes an appointment with two LA psychics, Marty and Michael Perry.
Allie had called me to let me know she was going to see the Perrys, go have a reading with them. She said that she would call me afterwards and let me know how it went.
The Perrys work as a team. Marty, an artist, claims to sketch what the spirits show her.
It's almost like automatic drawing. I get images of the people on the other side, and very often I'll have artists on the other side work through me. I'm in control, but I'm not.
Michael claims to channel them.
A medium's purpose is to be the vessel through which a deceased person communicates to a living person without getting in the way. It's like conscious possession. I'm there with you, but I'm not.
Allie records the session and tells them nothing about the murdered women. Michael Perry appears to fall into a trance.
I have two people here. One says my first name is A. She took my party. They said their life was taken. I can feel stabs up here around my neck, or my neck's cut. Murder. They're saying murder.
Two young women are stabbed to death in their Napa Valley home, while a third roommate escapes. 400 miles away, a pair of psychics claim to receive messages from the spirits of the murdered women.
Michael got on the phone and he said, I need to speak with you. And we set up an appointment for a phone interview or reading.
Marty and Michael felt that they could possibly help out in our investigation. I told Laura that I was open for anything.
A month after the murders, a phone reading is arranged. Lauren takes notes while Michael and Marty Perry record the session. Marty allows spirits to guide her hand as she begins to sketch, while Michael enters a trance and establishes contact with the murdered women, Leslie Mazzara and Adrian and Sonia.
You know, she's the loudest one. She's the talker to me.
Michael had told me that Adrian was coming through more clearly. She had a very analytical mind. She was definitely in the forefront of everything, whereas Leslie kind of stood back.
She said you'd have said you'd be dead too. You understand?
Adrian knew that I had left the house. She would have not known I would have left the house unless she was already past and seeing things.
Michael claims to see the female police officer who first arrived at the murder scene.
She couldn't take it or didn't want to be in there. She left, didn't she? This is what she says.
When I heard that, I was very surprised, and I looked over to Kirk. I said, did that happen? And he said, yes. That kind of sealed it for me.
You know, I had goosebumps just like she did. Those were details that were not released. Those were details that were kept very private as to not inhibit the investigation.
All this time, Marty Perry has been sketching the face of a man.
I did ask the girls on the other side to send me an image of the perpetrator. The biggest feeling was the goatee. When I get facial hair, and I'm drawing it, I start itching all over the place, and that's what I was getting when I was drawing that.
After the session, they emailed it to me, and I remember looking at it. It actually looked familiar. I wasn't sure why.
Could this be a portrait of the killer? Detective Primo adds the sketch to the case file in hopes it will trigger something.
This could be for real.
Perrys were interested in coming up and meeting with us in person, and so he definitely wanted to pursue that.
DNA results from the blood taken at the crime scene identify 3 people: Leslie, Adrian, and what police believe is the killer, a white male.
But these women were very popular women, and they had tons and tons of friends. Leslie had ties to so many different cities and states that they had to do all of that, and they just interviewed people
Police ask all of the women's male friends to provide voluntary DNA samples.
There was several pools of individuals to be interviewed and to be sampled.
It wasn't just a local police department investigation. There were several state and federal agencies involved.
There was a lot of high and lows periods during the investigation when we felt that we might have somebody whose DNA was eventually going to come back and be a match to what we had. And then there was the lows when those didn't.
Over the next 6 weeks, DNA results eliminate suspect after suspect. Police are no closer to catching the killer.
We knew we had what it was going to take to link our assailant to the crime. It was just finding that assailant.
Looking for anything that might help to solve the case, the police meet with the psychic couple, this time in Napa. Michael Perry claims to connect once more with one of the murdered girls, Adrian.
I said to Lauren, "Who's Lily?"
Lauren can only think of Lily Prudhomme, Adrian's best friend.
They worked together very closely, so they knew each other well from that. Adrian, when I met her, lived across the street from Lily.
The two were so close that Lily had postponed her wedding so that she and Adrian could travel together. But what could Lily have to do with the murders?
There was no way that I even would second guess any Lily or anyone related to Lily being involved with this crime. It's something I completely dismissed. I didn't even write it down in my notes. Focus was more on Leslie. So anyone kind of on Adrian's side was not as heavily focused on. So there weren't a lot of flags going up at all.
Lauren felt just as I did that it was just Adrian's best friend and that it really didn't have any significance other than Adrian was trying to maybe get a message to Lily.
Maybe there are more answers at the house.
Lauren was clearly traumatized. You could see it.
Yeah, she didn't want to go to the house.
I quickly learned my limitations on what I could give and what I couldn't.
Even before the police officer and the psychics enter the house, Michael Perry claims to key into the crime.
I said, "Oh, there are blood splats that you found out on the porch." I said, "That's his blood." And he said, "Yes, we believe so." I said, "Oh, the window opened up and he climbed in through the windows and you found blue fibers on the windowsill." Kurt said, "Yes."
Inside, no evidence of that horrific night remains. Michael Perry goes straight upstairs.
I knew immediately which room it had happened in.
Michael ran his hand along the banister and it stopped and said that he believed the killer's blood had been located on the banister in these locations. And in fact, that is where it had been found.
So we stood in the room for a while, and of course there was nothing there. It had all been cleaned out. I remember saying to him, "You found one girl here and you found the other girl here, didn't you?" And he said, "Yes." Adrian was doing most of the communicating with me, and she told me that the other girl had been stabbed first, then attacked Adrian. She put up a big struggle.
Then, Michael Perry says what the police already suspect.
I strongly felt that it was someone they absolutely knew. There was no question about it in my mind that they knew this person.
He has one more message from Adrian.
She kept referencing a boyfriend.
Months after the stabbing deaths of two young roommates in Napa, a pair of psychics give police a name they claim comes from the dead women themselves. The name Lily.
Adrian's best friend, Lily, who was engaged at the time to a gentleman by the name of Eric Koppel, had come over and done some work on the dryer at the residence. Eric Koppel's name had not surfaced. An interview actually had been done with Lily, his fiance, who was a co-worker of Adrian's.
The police have interviewed over 1,000 men, but not the 26-year-old land surveyor, Eric Koppel.
I added him to my checklist. He was the 11th item on the checklist to make contact with him, to do an interview and obtain a voluntary DNA sample. When I first saw the picture of Eric, the first thing that stood out was the sketch that Marty and Michael had provided and how accurate it was, looking almost identical to Eric. It also put pieces together, such as what Lily meant.
Before he can interview Lily's boyfriend, Eric Koppel, Detective Primo is taken off the case.
My rotation to rotate out of investigations was about to come up. I created this checklist to which I passed on to the incoming detective. The list was never followed up upon, and Eric was never contacted.
The investigation inched along for nearly a year. Leads dried up, and no more tips were coming in.
Lots of community pressure, lots of community uncertainty, and the pressure was that we need to solve this.
And no one wanted answers more than Lauren Mianza.
I was fearful that it would just be forgotten about, I think, and become a cold case.
It was finally decided through the department that we would go ahead and reveal the brand of cigarette that had been collected and sampled DNA the night of the homicide. A rare brand, and one that had been introduced not long before the crime had occurred.
DNA on the cigarette butts matches the DNA of the blood found at the crime scene. Blood, the police believe, belongs to the murderer.
We didn't associate with any smokers. And then I stopped. I thought, you know, Lily smokes. And so does her boyfriend at the time. They smoked. So I gave them Eric Koppel's name.
September 22nd, 2005. The police released the distinctive brand of cigarettes to the media. Camel Turkish Gold. Eric Koppel's brand. 5 days later, accompanied by his now wife Lily, the quiet land surveyor turns himself in.
Was shocked at first, and then it kind of made sense. He didn't stick out, but he kind of just survived under large personality of Lily.
No one in the community, and especially people that knew him, thought that Eric was ever a suspect, let alone a killer.
Eric Matthew Koppel is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, lying in wait, and using a knife.
He was fearful of losing Lily. He was fearful that Adrian was convincing Lily to leave him. And their wedding had been called off, and he blamed Adrian. Adrian and Lily had planned a trip to Australia together. And so he was just deathfully afraid of losing her. So his answer was, kill the one that's in the way of my happiness with Lily. Kill the problem.
On Halloween night 2004, Eric Koppel admits he drank heavily at a party, during which he quarreled with Lily. A few hours later, armed with a knife, he entered the house on Dorset Street through an unlocked window. He creeps upstairs, and at this point the sequence of the attack is only known to Eric. But in the end, Adrian and Leslie lay dying in Adrian's room after being repeatedly stabbed. Adrian was the intended target. It seems Leslie Mazzara may have died trying to help her friend.
Still today, I can speculate on why he didn't touch me, or, you know, he avoided my room. I'm not sure. Always a big question, so.
January 2007. More than 2 years after the murders, the quiet land surveyor faces the court.
Do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty, Your Honor.
His wife, Lily, who the Perrys had named as key to the case, was there at his sentencing.
Eric, there is nothing in this world that you could do to make me love you less.
I am a broken man. Oh, it sucks. A man splintered by penetrating awareness of my own potential for wickedness.
And it is ordered Eric Matthew Koppel is to serve a life sentence without possibility of parole.
Finally, some closure for the family and friends.
I was just so thankful that there had been a resolution to everything.
After having gone through this and having the experience of working with mediums, don't overlook. They may be a very good asset to your investigation, and at least they may be a small piece to that puzzle that you're missing.
I felt Adrian was a very strong personality, a very determined girl, and that she was determined to put this guy away or do something about it.
And that's what we do this for, is to help heal people, help realize that there is another side, and that we don't die.
The first night when I was questioned, I asked, what do people in my situation generally do? And Kirk had said, people don't generally survive in this situation. They're usually killed too. The experience with the Perrys has given me a faith that after we pass, that we can still have a connection to the ones we've loved in this lifetime.
This time on Psychic Investigators. In the icy waters off the coast of Maine, a lobster boat disappears.
A wall of water that you can't see over.
Its captain is lost in the waves.
The ocean's full of creatures that are carnivores.
A massive air and sea search can't find him.
It's a needle in a haystack.
But a New York City psychic says she knows where he is.
It's an island. He's to the left of that.
Laughed my butt off.
And she knows exactly when he'll be found.
He would be found within 2 days. I know I'm right.
Kittery, Maine, an hour's drive up the Atlantic coast from Boston. One of the oldest settlements in America, Kittery has always been a fishing town. It's a community united in its love of the sea and its respect for the dangers of fishing life. Mother's Day, May 11th, 2008. Chris Toby, a fifth-generation fisherman, readies his lobster boat, the Save-A-Buck. With him are his 16-year-old son, Christopher, and 21-year-old deckhand, Robert Blackburn. This time, Chris's dog Black is left behind as he makes the 10-mile trip to Duck Island, where the Tobys set their lobster traps. Although the sea was rough and the wind was picking up, it was just another normal day for the fishermen. The following morning, Chris Toby's daughter realizes her father and brother are not home. Maybe they docked somewhere else for the night. She radios them. No answer. Something is wrong.
No communication, no phone calls, no radio calls. That's a huge red flag. That's an immediate response. Something is desperately wrong.
John Bennett is a retired deputy chief of the Maine Marine Patrol.
When there's no mayday, it becomes a worst-case scenario. Someone's in the water, and they're struggling for their life.
The Coast Guard sends out a rescue boat and a helicopter to look for the 3 missing men.
Their mission is search and rescue. They are out to save people's lives.
At this time of year, the Atlantic waters are frigid. Hypothermia is a real danger.
You have a very short time to get saved. It's very difficult to find someone on the coast of Maine because of the tide, the currents, the weather conditions. The success rate is not very high.
Along the coast, word spreads of the missing fishermen.
Everybody knows everybody else, so there's so much community.
Karen Dandurant covers the story for the Portsmouth Herald.
It's a fishing village. Boats are going to get in trouble. But everyone kind of rallies together. I rallies around the family because it's one of their own.
Guy might be your worst enemy yesterday, and today's in trouble, and you're rushing out there to help him.
Dozens of local fishermen join in the search. The 3 men have been missing for over 12 hours, but they could still be alive. With the threat of hypothermia, every minute counts.
The Coast Guard estimated safely be in the water for 2 to 3 hours.
For almost 2 hours, the Coast Guard searches the waters in the Isle of Shoals off Kittery. Mid-morning, a local fisherman spots a plume of smoke over Duck Island, 10 miles out from Kittery where the Tobys had set their traps.
My cousin called me and said they found everybody. Oh God, yeah, cool.
Mike Waldron is one of Chris Toby's best friends.
And then I got the other reports. They had 2 out of the 3. So immediately my heart sunk.
Safe but suffering from hypothermia, deckhand Robbie Blackburn and young Christopher are brought to shore by the Coast Guard. But where is Captain Chris Toby?
My grandson and another boy were picked up off the island and they were at Portsmouth Hospital.
Thornton Toby is Chris Toby's father.
I saw my grandson, who was beat up from the incident, but nonetheless okay, sort of in a state of shock. I asked him what happened, and he told me the story.
Sitting there all looking forward, we weren't looking behind us. I hear rogue wave and turn around. There's, a wall of water that you can't see over. Just a freak wave, really. Picked up the stern, it kind of went like that. I didn't know where the hell I was.
No life jacket, no survival suit, 10-foot waves and 55-degree water. It's a life or death situation.
The waves were going in, but the current was pulling me out. And I just flew away from the boat. My dad kind of saw me floating away and thought he could save me, came after me. We were with each other and we were trying to swim back towards the boat, but too much current, just too much waves. You just couldn't do it.
His mouth was gone.
You hear stories of a couple people swimming to shore, they're talking to each other, they're looking at each other, and then one of them just disappears. No sign of struggle, just to go down.
All Chris Toby can do now is save himself.
Current kind of whips around, caught me, and started bringing me back in.
And it brought him to Duck Island, where deckhand Robbie Blackburn had managed to swim ashore.
I was with my old man all the way till the end.
Chris Toby would give you the shirt off his back. He was very generous.
He just wanted to be a fisherman, and boats were his whole life, from the time he was a little boy. Couldn't keep him off the water. How could he be gone?
He was always trying to help someone, get going, or someone start a business, or, someone just catch up in life.
The Coast Guard continues to look for the missing fishermen.
They wouldn't have called it off immediately. You would continue in a good faith effort for a while.
For the next several hours, they cover 270 square miles of the Atlantic and make more than a dozen sweeps. Nothing. The Coast Guard calls off the search.
It changes from a search and rescue to a recovery. You're now looking for a body.
Everyone was just desperate to bring him home.
When the story appears in the paper the next day, Portsmouth resident Joseph Churchwell thinks of his sister in New York City.
My brother said there was a drowning. A lobster man had drowned in the waters of Maine.
Helen Churchwell Ligotti is a psychic who has a personal interest in finding the lost at sea. Her father died in World War II.
My father was killed at sea. I didn't search for him, but I could search for somebody else.
Helen uses what she calls her sixth sense.
This is like a premonition immediately, but it reacts in the solar plexus. It's a quickening, and that gives you your answer. So I never doubt when I get this quickening. I never doubt when it flashes in my mind. I know I'm right. And I said, well, give me his name. And he said, Christopher Toby. Told me about his son and his friend. I just read his name. I touched his name. I knew where Christopher Toby was.
A lobster boat capsizes in high seas off Kittery, Maine. 2 crewmen are rescued, but the captain is lost. A New York psychic claims she can see the location of the missing lobsterman. Helen Ligotti uses what she calls her 6th sense to find the lost at sea. It's how she located her own grandson who drowned in 2001.
The Coast Guard came, brought nautical maps, put them on the table. I looked at the maps, pointed to the spot, and said, he's right there. The police at this time in New York, most of the time, the authorities do not accept information from a psychic. They dropped it. Mark came out 42 days later in here, the spot I said he was in.
The psychic asks her brother to put her in touch with the woman who wrote the newspaper article about the missing man.
She called me, introduced herself, told me she was a psychic. I'm a news reporter. I'm like, sure. She said, I can help find him. So I let her describe it to me.
And I kept picking up a diamond. I mean, how do you say a diamond's in the middle of the water? I thought I was nutty. And I said, why would a diamond be there? And then a letter R kept flashing in my mind. Christopher Toby is near the diamond. I do see foliage, I see trees, and I see land.
Really didn't mean a lot to me. It sort of sounded to me like the Isles of Shoals, but I don't know enough about them to call up Marine Patrol and go, this is where she thinks he might be. I told her I'd pass the information on. Called Maine Marine Patrol and talked to Sergeant Rick LaFlamme. Gave him the information, and he said, well, I'll give her a call. I think at that point they were willing to try anything. I doubt that they believed she'd be accurate.
May 14th. Christopher Toby has been lost at sea for 3 days.
When someone drowns and they swallow water, they get negative buoyant. They go straight down and they stay there. You have a short amount of time to recover somebody before the damage to the body is so great, it disintegrates. The ocean's full of creatures that are carnivores, and they attack pretty quickly. Depending on the water temperature, how big he was, he could have started to float a little bit.
That means Christopher Toby could be pulled out to sea and lost forever.
There's been a lot of people that have drowned and never recovered.
The same day, Sergeant Rick LaFlamme of the Marine Patrol gives the psychic a call.
He said to me, tell me what you see or feel. I concentrate on a map. I will concentrate on the particular area. I will concentrate on a landmark, the person. I constantly saw a star. That's when he explained there was a Star Island. He called that one into me. I said, I keep feeling a diamond. Somehow another R is connected there. So he said, I know what you're talking about.
Looking at the nautical maps, Sergeant LaFlamme knows the diamond is an icon for a type of buoy called a red nun. Around the Isle of Shoals, there are only 2 red nun buoys. Which one is it?
I kept smelling apples. And he told me on the phone it was Appledore. There's an Appledore Island.
One of the red nun buoys is just off the coast of Appledore Island. The patrol sergeant wants to know if the psychic can zero in even further. She turns to a divination tool taught to her by her grandmother.
He makes forms for me. What I did was concentrate on the location of this particular person. And I say, wait a minute, we got an N. That meant I was picking up on north. North, it has to be north. Kept feeling foliage. Once I started to see foliage, I knew there had to be land there. I sketch what I see. This is a crude sketch. I take it and I match it to the map, and I pinpoint the spot. To the left of that land.
The psychic told Sergeant LaFlamme where she felt the body was.
I have it, Helen. I know where you're staying.
He marked it on a chart.
An area northwest of Duck Island where the divers have already searched. Marine Patrol shares the information with the local search teams. Every available boat is out there helping.
You know the guy all your life. You know, he's in the water there somewhere. Everybody's wondering if he's dead or alive. Did he swim to Bermuda? You know, there's no closure. You know, it is without everybody looking at a body.
They're never going to stop wondering what happened to him if they don't actually physically get to bury a body. They want him home, even if it's to bury him.
Black Dog Divers had a team down. There were a couple of independent divers that went, that knew Chris. The Maine Marine Patrol sent a lot of divers. May have been 10 divers.
The divers try to search the murky waters around Duck Island. By afternoon, the foul weather returns.
The seas were high, the water's cold. There were storms coming in. They had to think of the safety of their crews, too.
And that's why the Marine Patrol would have called off the search, because it's just too darn dangerous. It doesn't make any sense to risk somebody else to recover a body at that time.
Then, a piece of wreckage from the Save-A-Buck washes ashore 25 miles away from the search area. Have they been searching in the wrong place all along?
Could have drifted that far. Odds weren't very good. Eventually, all bodies will float, so.
The psychic said he would be found around Duck Island. And she had told the Marine Patrol sergeant when Toby's body would be found.
Kept getting a chew. He would be found within 2 days.
That means tomorrow. Kittery, Maine. Strong winds and rough waters have delayed the search for a lobsterman, now missing 5 days. A psychic says he'll be found today. Friday morning, May 16th. The sky is finally clear, but the Marine Patrol decides to discontinue the search.
Once it goes from a search to recovery, there's only so many hours and there's only so much money set aside for the state divers and everybody to search. So there always has to be a cutoff. For state resources, that was the time allotted.
Then Mike and I said, well, we can continue the search on our own effort.
Jeff Campbell is a commercial diver and a good friend of the missing lobsterman.
I'm not Superman. I wasn't coming in to save the day.
Jeff Campbell and Mike Waldron head out to search for their friend.
I guess we're kind of like the Marines. We don't want to leave anybody behind. I couldn't sleep at night knowing that I didn't try 120% to bring a fellow fisherman home.
Maine Marine Patrol Sergeant Rick LaFlamme has let everyone know about the psychic's vision of where to find the missing lobsterman. An area off Duck Island, northwest from where the boat went down. Psychic visions are nothing new to Mike Waldron. His brother helped to find another missing lobsterman, Dennis Hamill, Mike's best friend, who drowned in similar waters 4 years earlier.
My brother's abilities are quite astounding. Certain predictions of his that would just raise the hair on the back of your neck. I'm a pretty insightful person. I'm blessed with a few gifts myself. That's probably why Rick was so receptive to the idea of this lady calling him out of the blue to tell him where there was a body. Because he already knew. He said, wait a second, Mike's already done this once with the psychic help. Why not?
Waldron, Campbell, and Waldron's wife Wendy head out to the area off Duck Island where the psychic, 400 miles away in New York, said the body would be found.
Before we even jumped in the water, we decided we were going to go deeper than the recovery teams and the commercial divers had already searched.
If the psychic is right, it will be a deep and dangerous dive.
We figured Chris was going to be in 60 to 110 feet of water, but we're going to start at 60 feet of water.
At noon, they drop anchor on the northwest corner of Duck Island.
With the deep water was limited time, because at those depths, you aren't going to get back in the water and do another dive.
You have to take into consideration bottom time. At 60 feet, you have 60 minutes, generally speaking. So at 80 feet, the divers don't have a lot of bottom time. It's a quick little down and back, really.
We do a tow-in procedure, but you're constantly moving. That way you're covering the most ground that you can. We went from that corner north, along the north face of Duck Island, but out beyond the limits of the other recovery divers. It seems like you're diving in a washing machine. The seas can be moving in several directions. It's not just like one continuous wave pool. You know, you can be pushed in different directions simultaneously, practically.
"15 minutes into the dive, Campbell sees something.
You know, I'm looking down like this. Chris was off to my right, about 20 feet down in the crevice, laying face down, straight out, arms at his side. And he was on the borderline of my depth, being able to see down to my right. First dive, less than a half a tank, and he was right there.
You never know. It's a needle in a haystack. We were just fortunate enough to thread the needle.
I can remember it like yesterday.
Chris Toby's body is found 100 yards from where psychic Helen Ligotti said it would be found, and on the day she predicted.
Oh my God, that's what she said. Well, when you have a brother like mine, you're used to it, so it didn't surprise me in the least bit. They can do amazing things, if you believe.
I think when you imagine the enormity of the ocean and all the variables that can happen when someone drowns, just to be able to find that person, it's a big, big deal. It really is.
To be found in that short a time, it was a really, really long shot.
They bring the body of Chris Toby to the Coast Guard station. The search has ended.
I got my car and I did about 50 miles an hour to the Coast Guard station. A relief in one way, but made me upset again in another way.
I was just happy that they had found him. But you're never going to get over this. It just leaves a big hole. You never get over it.
One of the authorities called me to tell me he's been found. He said, Helen, you were right. You have no idea how close you are. He was found within the 2-day period, and we got him home.
Sergeant LaFlamme admitted to me that Christopher Toby was found pretty much where she said he would be.
The divers found the body within 100 yards of where she marked it on the chart, which in my opinion is remarkable. 100 yards on the ocean is minuscule.
It's kind of a miracle. I mean, she just found him. She had never even been to the Isles of Shoals. I had to explain to her what they were. Kind of in awe, being a skeptical reporter.
I didn't find it unusual, or it didn't bother me any. I've used psychics before. I would use any means to make a recovery. It can't hurt.
The Save-A-Buck is recovered and examined. The vessel's automated emergency beacon failed to transmit the boat's distress. As a result, the search was delayed for 15 hours. Chris Toby never stood a chance.
Well, the Save-A-Buck he really liked. It was a state-of-the-art boat, 3 times as fast as anybody. He always knew when Chris was upset, though, because there's a little extra water flying off her. He'd have her wound right up. That was a nice boat. Chris knows what he's doing when he's building boats.
Thornton Toby is grateful to Mike Waldron and Jeff Campbell for making the dangerous dive.
It was just above and beyond. I think he must have had a lot of feelings for my son, or he wouldn't have put himself in that danger.
I'm really happy that they, found him. I still do all the same things. Nothing's changed that much, except for that my dad's not here, I hate it. I hate it.
I think he's trying to do what he thought his father would want him to do, and I think that's been a comfort to him.
After it first happened, I felt like I never ever wanted to go back out there again. But I went out there, we hauled up my traps, and once I got through them the first time, I felt okay again, It made me feel a bit more like myself again.
Black still goes down to the docks every day, waiting for his master to come home.